This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is Mark Sale, of course, the CEO of First Class Metals. Mark, it's good to be catching up with you. How are things?
Good. Quite busy, Mark, but just getting back into the rhythm after returning from Vancouver on the weekend.
Okay, good. Well, let's catch up on what you're working on there. But I mean, tell us a bit about Vancouver. What were you doing there and what was the vibe?
Well, we had a booth at the VRIC, the Cambridge Investment, and then we also had a booth for this last 2 days of Roundup. And I must say that I'm starting to feel some sort of guarded, but feeling of positivity, shall we say, in the markets, in our peers, the service providers, be they laboratories, geophysicists, and what have you. Yeah, there seems to be, as I say, a guarded feeling that things are starting to come back.
Interesting, because that's a vibe that we picked up from Resourcing Tomorrow, or aka Mines and Money in London in December there. I remember being there last year and saying in my review that the money's there, but it's really holding back. And I was saying almost the same thing this year, but then I thought, no, actually, I get the feeling the money is slightly a bit looser than it was last year. So it's good to hear that there's some optimism there. I mean, it's certainly about time, isn't it? I mean, do you think it's because of the Trump administration, or do you just think it's been a couple of years of real hardship and now is the time really to start going again?
Well, I think Canada, if it was going to be affected by Trump, Canada would be, the 52nd state scenario affected. But being as it's their biggest trading partner, even the talk of tariffs, I don't really think it's going to have much of an effect on the Canadian economy. No, I just think generally things are starting to turn. I mean, there's always been money for the right projects. It's just putting yourself front and center as the right project. I mean, and that's where the deal that we've done with 79th, I think really is pivotal for First Class. I mean, I know there's criticism of the dilution, but if you're going to go out and raise money in these markets, you are going to be diluted. There's no other way other than just taking on debt, which we've tried in the past, and we found quite a millstone. So the deal with 79th gives us, in effect, a 51% cornerstone investor going forward, somebody with global reach that can really put our name out there and help spread the good work that First Class has been doing and is maintaining. And as actually, we've got people out in the field at the moment working. So the field season, well, the winter field season is on in preparation for the real field season when the thaw comes.
Okay, good. Well, before we talk about what's going on sort of on the ground and in the field there, that deal with the 79th Group, could you perhaps just give us a bit more information around how that came about? I mean, you mentioned there, of course, no one likes dilution, but it is inevitable in, of course, this space. And we are seeing a lot of heavily discounted placings, the worst I've sort of seen really in sort of 10 years of being involved in this space, which again sort of perhaps suggests that, can it get much worse? Is the bottom sort of in and is the optimism coming back? But I mean, the deal you did there, I'm guessing it was probably the best solution that you could do at the time, really.
Absolutely. I mean, as a board, we made a collective decision to go ahead with the negotiations with the 79th. But I also spoke to our broker and other potential investors, and what they would offer at that time and the discount they were asking was crippling. And actually, although it'll probably never come out officially, shall we say. When we started the negotiations with 79th, the agreed 1.7 wasn't at a significant discount. It was almost a 5-day average of the current price, because it took several weeks, the negotiation, before we actually got the proposal inked. But we signed a heads of terms quite quickly, and that tied in the price, of course. Why did they pick First Class? Well, we first met with them almost exactly a year ago, to be honest, in their offices, James and I. They liked the way we did things. They liked the way we were, our vision, if you like. And as you're aware, June, July last year, we sold them two of our properties. And I think that might also have been the catalyst, shall we say, or initiated the thinking, well, hold on, we are a resource company. We've got a lot of assets that we can, financial assets that we can throw at that. We've got a huge worldwide marketing team. Let's do something with them. And Dave Webster, the chairman of 79th, he's an amazingly dynamic person. But one of his conditions was, I want control. So it was a 51% deal or no deal.
Right.
Which actually means once the first GM is passed, the first stage, when they get in the issued shares over 40%, our £700,000 debt to them, loan from them, will be repaid in stock. We will then issue them further stock to get them up to the 44%. And as a result, we will end up with 1.4, I think, don't quote me, £1 million in the bank, which is going to keep us funded through this year as far as G&A and field operations are concerned. So, yes, in this climate, even though we've just been discussing that things are improving, in the current climate, last September, October, when we started the negotiations, things were even more dire, as I'm sure you're aware. It was a no-brainer for us, despite the criticism that I've received personally, as well as the company has received. We didn't really see another way out. Yes, we could have, of course, tried to do a short raise, which would have just kept the lights on. But instead, we had actually decided before we entered negotiations with 79th that we were going to do a prospectus, because we were handicapped by this 20% rule on the LSE. And I think we did 3 raises last year, and it was because we could only issue 20% of the shares on issue on a rolling 12-month period. So we were severely handicapped by the headroom that allowed us. So we made the decision to use the funds from the last fundraise last year to do a prospectus. So this prospectus allows us to issue all the shares to 79th, as well as others that are outstanding to various contractors and ex-directors.
Okay. So the deal with 79th, and then it's not a joint venture. They are effectively a cornerstone, a strategic, and will be a majority shareholder and owner of First Class here. So it really aligns both ends of the company here, you and them. And I mean, how does it work going forward? Do they make the decisions and you do the work on the ground?
Well, they're a strategic investor with a 51%. Now, we've had to do it in 2 stages because of the whitewash panel and the FCA regulations. So it's not deemed a takeover. They're just, as I say, a majority shareholder through this investment transaction. So going forward, they don't want to drop below 50%, because then we'd have to start the process all over again with the whitewash, etc. So there's no doubt in my mind that they will remain a 51% shareholder going forward. And as you say, therefore, a cornerstone investor if we deem to go to the market to raise money. But don't forget, they've got a significant number of warrants exercisable at 5p and the same number exercisable at 10p. And I have to say, those prices were our suggestion, and there was no pushback from Dave and 79th on those. So when you think the deal was done at a third of what the first warrants are issued at, I think it also shows their confidence in First Class and 79th's ability to market us. Obviously, we need to have the exploration success, but now we have the funds to get out there and do it. And as I say, we're already out there working.
So you say you've got the funds certainly for the next 12 months anyway, so that covers you for the whole of this year. Where's the activity at the moment then? Where are those funds being appropriated to?
Currently, we have a team on North Hemlo, the North Hemlo block, and they're doing a VLF, a MAG survey. VLF, very low frequency. And they're doing this in the areas of some of the highly anomalous lake sediment samples that were collected a previous winter. And we're doing it now, Mark, because they're doing it on the ice. Because lake sediments that are in the lake. So to do a geophysical survey across a lake during the summer, shall we say, is quite difficult and expensive. So they're out there on the ice. I mean, it was minus 28 the other day. The guys are absolute incredible. They really are. So this VLF survey across these areas of lake sediments, we're hoping will pick up structures. So then we have a better idea of where to zone in on the ice and off the ice. We're also doing VLF across the dead otter trend.
Okay.
Now, the update we put out the other day about dead otter was significant in as much that the last round of prospecting, soil sampling, and some of the stripping has indicated that the trend is not a narrow, high-grade structure. It's potentially up to 30 meters wide, which, as you can understand, is a game changer. It means that we're looking for something that has a geochemical footprint 30 meters wide, as opposed to something that's very high grade but only maybe a meter wide. So the VLF over the lake sediments will give us targets going forward for exploration. That's across the block. There's 7 areas that we're looking at. Mm-hmm. And the VLF across the dead otter will hopefully tie down the structure and allow us to do further soil sampling and possibly stripping in the spring when the thaw comes in. Dead otter is still an incredibly exciting discovery. Maybe the results of the stripping weren't exactly what I'd hoped for, but the soil sampling and subsequent prospecting, as I say, has rejuvenated it. But what it has brought home is that structure is king. And because of that, we are talking with a revered structural geologist to come out there in the spring when the snow's away and spend some time looking at the areas of stripping and the general trend so that we can help to unlock the structure. We could go out there and drill it tomorrow. We have the funds. We theoretically have the target. But as it's structurally complex, it's a bit of slowly at this stage. Before we actually commit the rotary truth machine.
Right, okay, so slowly before you get into drilling there. Okay, that makes sense. What about the other projects, and namely perhaps Sunbeam?
Well, Sunbeam, again, towards the end of last year, we did a soil orientation sampling program over the Roy, Pettigrew and Road Zone anomalies. Roy and Pettigrew were producers of gold back in the day. And the soil orientation program showed that our belief, which was based on the review of the core earlier in the year, is that yes, it's not just the high-grade quartz veins that are carrying gold, but there is gold in the porphyry and the sheared mafics, which are the host to those quartz veins. So again, it's increased the geochemical footprint. So we're a bit like the dead otter in some way. We're now not targeting what could be very narrow, high-grain targets, which could be incredibly difficult. I mean, the Newinsko drill hole was, 93 grams, 98 grams over half a meter. I mean, that's a lovely thing to drill, but trying to find that on the surface and follow it is incredibly difficult. Whereas if we've got a 10-meter wide, which it possibly is now, geochemical signature, the soil sampling will help us. So we're planning more soil sampling at Sunbeam, particularly around Roy, where the historical drilling was very encouraging, and we did the stripping, which helped us with the structural understanding. So we're progressing Sunbeam as well. Also, this winter, when the guys finish at North Hemlo, they'll be going on to the new claim block. Well, it was 18 months ago we claimed it on the northeast extension of Sunbeam, and they'll be doing lake sediment sampling program across that whole 119 claim block. We are also doing some lake sediments on the main Sunbeam block in order that we can reference them. So we're doing lake sediments near historic sites of production or known drill anomalies, so we can gauge how good the anomalies will be in the north. So that's moving ahead. I think with North Hemlo Dead Otter and North Hemlo generally and Sunbeam, we've got 2 incredible claim blocks. We really have. And let's not forget, Sunbeam is over 70 square kilometres, so it's a significant claim block. And North Hemlo, when you add in the on gold, It's over 100 square kilometres. Again, very significant. And whilst I'm mentioning on gold, we had 103 ppb lake sediment anomaly on gold that we took part of the due diligence. The guys will be following that up this winter whilst we have the ice.
Okay.
So those are the two, shall we say, dual flagship projects.
Yeah, okay. So, and the other projects, then, are they sort of a little bit on the back burner?
No, we flew magnetics over Kerr, low-level, high-res magnetics over Kerr. That's currently been interpreted by a Toronto company that did the North Hemlo interpretation. We're expecting to get that back probably March time around PDAC. And we're also looking at the resource. I'm trying to track down the guy who did the original resource in 2011 to discuss with him about an idea of reviewing that in order that we can look at potentially high grade, even though it will lower the ounces in the tons. And I think that with the interp of the mag might well help us unlock some targets for further work at Kerrs. We are also in discussions with a metallurgist on zigzag. The idea being we want to provide with some material do some benefaction studies on upgrading if it is upgradable, because that's the key, as I'm sure you're aware, with these hard rock lithium pegmatites, is being able to benefact them before you try and process them. So those are the main things we're pushing on at the moment. However, yes, I do have a wish list of things I want to do on ESSA, for example, and Magical. So there are other areas, but we will focus on North Hemlo and Sunbeam as far as field work is concerned.
Okay, so you're focusing on effectively the gold projects, given the environment.
I mean, there is again in Vancouver. There's a feel that lithium is starting to come back, whether it's this year or next year. So we just want to be ready when it does come back for some extra information based on the drilling.
Okay, and just on what you talked about there in terms of the sort of the different surveys that you're doing on in North Hemlo there and Sunbeam. I mean, you said sort of taking a bit more slowly. Is it fair to say that it might be a little bit slower this year, less excitement, but more solidity, if that's the right sort of way to sort of talk about it? I don't know.
No, I think there's going to be excitement this year. If the VLF generally produces further prospecting targets, if the VLF over the Dead Otter helps with the structure and the structural review by the geologist helps with the structure, we're all going to put it together. Obviously, both at Sunbeam and Dead Otter North Hemlo, it will culminate in drilling.
Okay, right, okay. And on that note then, I mean, if you were to sort of, at the start of the year, where would you like to see the company progress throughout the year? And perhaps, I know you're going to PDAC as well. I'm sure you'll be talking to lots of potential, you have a booth there, I believe, so you'll be talking to lots of North American investors. What would be your sort of message to both existing and new investors as to perhaps, what they can expect from First Class this year?
I think we're going to rip the top off Dead Otter and Sunbeam, and that's where the excitement comes from. I mean, I was in Vancouver, and this well-dressed chap came up to the booth and was asking me about Sunbeam, and so I gave him the talk. I opened my heart to him about what we'd done, our aspirations, what we were going to do, and then at the end of it, I turned around and said, "What aspect of the industry are you in?" He said, "Well, you're going to laugh." And he pulled out his business card, and he was a senior exploration geologist for Agnico Eagle, which, as you know, 10 miles away from Sunbeam is their 3.3 million ounce deposit. So I have to be honest, Mark, I gave myself a little pat on the back afterwards because he was just nodding. Yes, that's good. Yes, that's good. Oh, I like that. So the big boys are watching us, and seemingly we're doing it how they would do it. So it is a little bit like slowly catchy monkey. But let's be honest, a junior explorer like we are, we get one chance at the first drill program. So I want to make sure that we have as much information as possible before we commit to wherever it is. However little drilling you do is a significant cost to the company. So I want to get it right when we do it.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much, Mark Sale, for your time today and that comprehensive update from First Class Metals.
Thank you, Mark. Talk to you again soon, I hope.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programmes at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.